Living in Sunnyside Estates was never my dream scenario, but the location cut my commute in half, and the network of walking trails made it perfect for Maverick, my service dog. Maverick is a striking golden retriever trained to help me manage severe PTSD episodes stemming from my military service overseas. He's exceptionally disciplined, always wearing his service vest in public, always following commands without hesitation. I know the Americans with Disabilities Act inside and out you have to when your independence depends on a service animal. Still, I never thought I'd need to quote federal law to my HOA president during our very first interaction. The first time I met Karen Whitfield, she was clutching a clipboard like a weapon, her lips pinched into a scowl that looked permanently carved into her face. She introduced herself as the HOA president in a tone that implied I should feel honored just to be addressed. "I don't recall approving a dog in this community," she said sharply, her eyes narrowing as she looked down at Maverick, who sat perfectly still at my side. I calmly explained that Maverick wasn't a pet, he was a service dog, legally protected and exempt from HOA pet restrictions under federal law. She let out an irritated huff, muttered something about people always exploiting loopholes, and stormed off. I should have taken that moment as a clear warning. Over the next few weeks, 3 separate violation notices appeared in my mailbox. One cited my grass being a 1/4 inch too tall. Another claimed my mailbox was the incorrect shade of black. The third accused me of leaving my garbage can visible from the street for approximately 45 minutes after pickup. Every notice bore Karen's dramatic signature, complete with a smiley face that somehow felt more menacing than friendly. I fixed every issue immediately, determined not to escalate things. But deep down I knew these petty complaints were only the opening shots. Then came the HOA meeting. Karen proudly proposed a new regulation requiring all animals, including service animals, to be registered with the HOA board and to wear HOA-approved identification at all times. When I raised my hand and pointed out that this directly conflicted with the Americans with Disabilities Act, she cut me off mid-sentence. "Federal laws don't override community standards," she declared. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up. After the meeting, Karen leaned in close to me and whispered, "If you want to be difficult, I can be difficult too." Her breath smelled like coffee and intimidation. The following weekend, I was enjoying a quiet morning on my front porch. Maverick rested calmly at my feet while I read the newspaper. Suddenly, a shadow stretched across my lawn. Karen stood there in her usual khaki shorts and polo shirt, gripping a spray bottle. "Your dog is violating the new pet ordinance by not displaying proper HOA identification," she announced loudly, making sure nearby neighbors could hear. I reminded her, evenly, that Maverick was a service dog protected by federal law and that the rule she was citing hadn't even been officially implemented. Her face flushed a deep, angry red. "I'm sick of you military types thinking you're above the rules," she snapped, stepping closer. "If you won't comply, I'll handle this myself." Before I could react, she aimed the spray bottle directly at Maverick's face and squeezed the trigger. Maverick yelped and recoiled, pawing at his eyes in distress. I jumped up instantly, placing myself between them, and demanding to know what she had sprayed him with. "Just a little vinegar and water," Karen said smugly. "It won't hurt him. Maybe now, he'll learn to respect authority." I was furious, but years of training had taught me how to stay composed under pressure. I took Maverick inside immediately, flushing his eyes thoroughly and monitoring him closely. The solution had irritated his eyes badly, but thankfully there was no permanent damage. Once I was certain he was stable and comfortable, I called the police. When the dispatcher asked for my emergency, I reported the assault on my service dog and made sure to emphasize that interfering with a service animal is a federal offense. She took my information and assured me officers were on the way. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. I explained everything in detail, showed them Maverick's service documentation and training records, and pointed out Karen's house across the street. One officer stayed behind to take my full statement while the other went to speak with Karen. From my window, I watched her flail her arms dramatically, her face twisted with outrage. The officer didn't look impressed by her performance. When both officers returned, They informed me that Karen had admitted to spraying Maverick, but claimed she insisted she was simply enforcing community standards. The officers explained that they had already informed her that interfering with the service animal is a federal crime under the Americans with Disabilities Act, carrying serious fines and the possibility of jail time. On top of that, her behavior qualified as animal cruelty under state law. They told her she was being placed under arrest, and then turned to me, asking if I was willing to press charges. I didn't hesitate for a second. I said yes. Karen was led to the police cruiser in handcuffs, shouting the entire way. She screamed that she would have me evicted, that she knew people, and that the entire neighborhood would turn against me. Several neighbors had stepped outside to watch, drawn by the flashing lights and raised voices. I overheard one of them mutter, "She's finally gone too far." After the officers drove away, another neighbor approached me quietly and apologized for not speaking up during the HOA meeting. "We've all been scared of her for years," she admitted, her eyes drifting down to Maverick, who had fully recovered and was once again calm, alert, and steady at my side. The legal process moved far faster than I ever expected. Karen was formally charged with interference with the service animal, animal cruelty, and harassment. Her initial court appearance was almost surreal. She showed up dressed in expensive designer clothing, accompanied by a high-priced attorney whose confidence seemed to fade with every piece of evidence presented. The judge showed little patience, emphasizing repeatedly that community bylaws never override federal law, especially when disability accommodations are involved. While the case was still pending, an emergency HOA meeting was announced. I attended with Maverick, expecting resistance, but instead I was shocked by the turnout. Nearly every homeowner in Sunnyside Estates showed up. The vice president of the board stood and called for a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership, citing her reckless conduct and the legal exposure she had brought upon the entire community. When the vote was taken, it was unanimous. Karen was removed from the board effective immediately. Someone had even prepared new name placards for the board table, and Karen's name was noticeably missing. The criminal case concluded with Karen accepting a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge to avoid a longer jail sentence. The judge sentenced her to 30 days in county jail, a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at an animal shelter, and mandatory education courses on disability rights. As the sentence was read aloud, Karen's expression shifted rapidly from disbelief to anger, and finally to a grim understanding of what she had done. "I was just enforcing the rules," she protested weakly as the bailiff stepped forward. The judge leaned in and replied calmly, "The most important rule, Miss Whitfield, is respect for the law of the land which exists to protect service animals and the people who rely on them." As Karen was escorted out to begin serving her sentence, our eyes met briefly across the courtroom. The arrogance and entitlement that once defined her were gone, replaced by the hollow look of someone who had finally encountered a boundary she couldn't bully her way past. Her lips moved as if to say, "This isn't over," but we both knew it was. Maverick sat beside me, composed and attentive, the embodiment of professionalism. I reached down and scratched behind his ears, and he leaned gently into my hand. It was a quiet moment of reassurance, a reminder that our partnership had endured an unexpected trial and emerged stronger, grounded in trust, resilience, and the law that protected us both.